Hey everybody, welcome back to the 69th episode of Taps and Patience. I am AJ with Audacity Micro, despite what my jacket says, here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. How you doing, Harrison?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Music's kind of funky, isn't it?
It is.
So, fun fact about this music, it is AI generated.
Oh, really?
My new video editing software has a tool right inside it to AI generate music.
Do you have to give it a prompt?
You give it like some genre categories.
Oh, okay.
It's not quite as flexible as I had hoped, but it's like, hey, need royalty-free music, press button.
Gotcha.
It's all very kind of generic, but like most AI stuff is.
Fair enough.
I don't know. It was interesting. I tried it once.
So where do you want to start? We got a lot to talk about tonight.
We do. We can start with like some good news on my end.
All right, let's hear it.
The Haas is back up and running. So I got it taken apart. It was, in fact, a broken belt. It was pretty easy to get the new belt in there. Maybe even easier than the Tormach, honestly.
Oh, really?
And then I also got no, that's not true, actually. I take that back. Because it would have been harder had I not already removed the drawbar piston.
Okay.
But you do have to remove the drawbar piston to get a new belt in, which would have made it much more difficult. But I'd already taken out the drawbar piston to clean it, and I got that working way smoother. So my machine used to have a clunk whenever it did a tool change, which is just kind of bad for like all the assembly, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that clunk is now completely gone.
So what caused the clunk?
So basically the short answer is a sticky drawbar piston. The way the Haas machines work is it's like a 2-stage actuation on the piston. And it blows in low pressure air, waits for like half a second, and then switches to high pressure. And because mine was sticky, the low pressure air wasn't able to move the piston. And then when and it's supposed to like kind of preload against the drawbar. Then the high pressure air comes in and actually actuates the drawbar. So instead of what was happening is nothing was happening with the low pressure. And then the high pressure came in and went and would, hammer onto the end of the drawbar. So
I gotcha.
That was just a matter of cleaning. Everything in there was in pretty good shape. It just needed cleaned. And then I also was able to find the source of a alarm that I would have if I rapided at 100% rapids in Z. It would throw a spindle cable alarm. Mm-hmm. And I was able to find a loose wire connection and get that fixed. So now I can rapid 100% in Z, which is nice.
Do you know what your rapids are on that machine?
Like 540 or 600, something like that.
Okay, so you've been running it at like 250?
Yep. Kind of Tormach levels.
Okay, so it does. Okay, I was wondering. So that's kind of must feel like a Tormach then.
Yeah. Now I could actually feed faster than the rapids. I had like my feed rate in like in an adaptive clearing toolpath. I would set the toolpath to use a G1 for when it like not retracts, but goes back to the other side of the clearing move. And I had that set to do that at 500 inches a minute. And I believe it was at least trying to get to 500 inches a minute. So It was basically just like plane retracts and tool changes where it was down to 50%.
Okay.
But I got that fixed up. It was basically just a bad connector that was loose that they had tried to zip tie together, which was not the most effective means. So I got it seated really well and then sealed it with like electrical tape. And that seems to have done it.
Well, that's nice.
And then lastly, I plumbed in some air up to the head of the machine. I plumbed in 4 air lines. One for compressed air. One is going to be mist coolant. It'll actually be the coolant part of the mist coolant using the compressed air. And then 2 are just spare for future modifications or upgrades. So if I wanted to do something like the Pearson grabber system, or like a vacuum head or an air blow off or whatever. I have all those options there.
That's nice. You'd still have to add the solenoids and everything on the other end, but you have the cabling run.
Right now, the machine has 2 open solenoids. One
Okay.
is just an on off, like open close. The other one is set up for a double acting cylinder.
Gotcha. That's nice.
So yeah, I don't know. It gives me options.
So, I I had some problems with my air this morning when I was running my
Uh-oh.
machines. So uh, just talking about solenoids made me think of it. So we're still in the old shop. The plan was to
Mm-hmm.
be in the new shop by now, but that hasn't happened yet. And the machines haven't been running as much as I would like them to. And so all the air that was running through all the different airlines condensed out really far. So this morning, when I turned on the Tormach and started running some things, it was like really slow doing tool changes and like
Mm.
releasing the drawbar. And I was like, that's weird. And I was like, well, the machine hasn't run for a little while. So that makes sense. And then I go and I pick up the air hose to blow off the table, and it shoots a stream. It's like a water gun. It shoots a stream of
Oh
water
gosh.
straight out. And I went and I videoed some of it because it was like a water hose for a good 20 seconds or something. And it was just bad. And I was just like, oh yeah, can't say dryer, new machine, dryer, get rid of this problem.
Yeah.
But it was bad. And so I had to do a couple cycle changes on the Tormach, or a couple tool changes, trying to get all the water out of the system. Because it just, and I saw afterwards, I was looking in where the solenoids were, and they were just spewing water out like crazy. So I just,
Whoops.
I'm going to be so glad whenever we're moved over to the new shop. Because I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast, but we got a new compressor. We got a rotary screw compressor with
Nice.
a dryer. Which, speaking of which, guess how much that cost? It's a 10 horse, 3-phase.
New? You got it new?
New.
$12,000.
Half.
$6,000?
Roughly.
That's
Somewhere
not
in that
bad.
ballpark. Yeah, somewhere in that
That's
ballpark.
not
No,
bad at all.
it was a really, and with a dryer.
Yeah.
So I mean, and it's a 10 horse. And it was like $500 extra to go from 7.5 to 10 horse. So it was like, yeah, might as well.
3-phase?
3-phase.
Okay.
So I think if you go less, you can get them in a single phase, because I think that is an option. I don't think the 10 horse was, but I think they might have a 5 horse. It's not the Kaiser. It's like Kashan or something. I'm going to mispronounce it, but it's a really quiet one, and it's I mean, it filled up a 120-gallon tank in like under a minute.
Dude,
it came with.
It's crazy.
So I'm greatly looking forward to having that, because it is way quieter, has a built-in dryer. Just, it'll be able to handle all of our needs, and it's got some programming on it that we can play with. So it's going to be, and it was not as expensive as I was expecting. So, and I have a couple other shops around here that told me about it, and that's when I looked them up. So
I'll have to look into them when I'm ready to upgrade. My 80-gallon 5-horse piston compressor is doing fine now. And now that it's in its own room with a nice little foam box around it, it's not unbearable. So
do you get a lot of humidity?
Not really, because the shop is climate controlled all year round. In the winter, the air around here is bone dry.
Okay.
In the summer, it definitely gets pretty humid, but again, the shop is air conditioned. And my machines are on the far side from the compressor.
Okay.
So, is your system right now set up in a loop with like airdrops, or?
Yes. Well, it's not a loop. It goes. It has two fingers that go each way, and then there's drops along the way.
Is it set up where it's like graded, so all the if any water gets in the pipes, it like flows down to one end with the. Okay.
Well, not the old shop. The new shop, I have to install all the air stuff still. which I
And
got all the air fittings in for that.
And are your machines hooked up at the bottom of the drop, or do you have some space between the bottom of the drop and where they're hooked in?
And I don't have any space.
Okay. Yeah,
So
because what you're
so it's
supposed to do is have like a foot down the bottom and the valve up a little bit, or the fitting up a little bit. That's what I have.
so yeah, and so on the current, my dad was the one that plumbed everything, and he plumbed it long before we got in there. That's no
Yeah, and not for a
excuse.
machine shop.
Yeah, that's no excuse that we couldn't have gone in there and made some changes. And we have made some changes to the air, but not enough. But there's multiple drops that go down. And today, when I went to run the machine, and I had a stream of water coming out, I checked all the drops that were in front of the machine, and they were all. I mean, they're tubes that are probably from. They're probably 4 foot, 5 foot tall, long from the top line, and they were filled all the way up to the T.
Oh gosh.
And there was multiple drops like that were just all full of
How
water.
humid was it for you guys?
Oh, that's standard. I mean that happens. I have to do that, clean that. They'll fill that up in less than a month.
Huh.
And like I have a little, like a gallon tote,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll fill that up with water once every 2 weeks.
It's nuts.
Oh yeah, it's an insane amount of water. And the compressor, we've been running it so long, it's actually to the point where it's starting to spit a little oil, and it's burning
Mm-hmm.
oil. And so my dad's like, I'm probably going to need to get a new compressor because you guys have pretty much clapped that one out. So
Yeah.
it's pretty much done for.
Ooh, I need to
It's it.
change the oil in mine.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we did.
Just thinking.
We changed the oil in that one a couple times, but you can hear it sometimes. Like whenever it runs for long periods of time, like it just starts to get like this tinging noise, and then
Mm-hmm.
we have to go over and add a little bit of oil. So yeah, and it's not an old machine. I mean, the shop that we're in was built in 2018, and
Oh,
Dad
yeah.
got the machine brand new after that. So
Interesting.
it's not an old machine, but we've run it so much between the two machines and the sandblasting cabinet that it's. I mean, and the fact that it just has so much water going through it. There's, I think, 4 or 3 air water separators, and they'll all fill up with water completely. And so like I have to go through and like drain them all. So
Yeah,
they'll
I don't see any of that in my system.
so I've had so much water that I've drained out the bottom of the tank. I've I've drained out 3 or 4 bowls worth, and then filled up all the drops all along the way, like
Hmm.
the lines that we're not using. And if I don't address it, it'll get to that state in about a month.
That's nuts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an insane amount of water. Insane
Yeah.
amount of water. It's stupid. We ran the shop for 6 months when we moved in, and we didn't ever drain the tank,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't do too much sandblasting, so we didn't really notice it there. We'd notice it in our airlines whenever we'd spray, but you just spray for a while and eventually you blow it all out. And when we drained it the first time, there was probably 3 or 4 gallons of water in the bottom of the compressor, and it was like, oh, our capacity of the compressor tank has just increased greatly. So yeah, so I'll be so happy to be out of that shop for that air compressor. It's loud, and I swear it produces water, as like just as much water as it does air.
I heard someone pitch the idea the other day that you could have a humidifier on one side of the room and a dehumidifier on the other side of the room, and they would make wireless water.
Well, someone must have several different humidifiers somewhere because I'm collecting all of their wireless water. Someone's doing this experiment somewhere, and they're like, "Where's all the water going?" And I'm down here draining my compressor.
I wonder if it's because your compressor gets hotter or something.
Oh, I'm sure it does, because it's only supposed to have a 60% duty cycle, and
Mm-hmm.
we've definitely run it beyond that at times.
How big is that compressor?
It's an 80-gallon 5-horse piston, probably almost the
That's what I
identical thing
have.
that almost the identical thing that you got. So
mine does not run that much.
So when the lathe is running, it burns through a decent amount of air. Plus, when you add in, if you have the lathe running, the Tormach running, and the sandblasting cabinet, it burns through a lot of air. Enough that the compressor can't keep up. And it's
Yeah.
11 CFM, I believe. 11 and a half.
About mine, yeah.
Something like that.
Interesting.
So, I mean, the sandblasting cabinet alone, it can't keep up with.
I did put a buffer tank on my Tormach for when we were doing a lot of sandblasting, because our pressure would dip when we were sandblasting as well, and then the machine would alarm out on tool changes.
Yeah. Did you
So
put like a check valve or?
Yep, I put a 5-gallon tank on it with a check valve. So that 5
Okay.
gallon tank always basically stays at line pressure, and if line dips for a second, it gives the machine really about probably 4 or 5 tool changes before needing to be refilled, which is nice.
Yeah, and you'll just automatically refill once the pressure goes up to the right point.
Yep.
That's nice.
So that just cured that issue overnight, which was cool. The only downside, you got to be careful, because now if you turn off the compressor and drain the lines, the machine will still have pressure in it. So
Yeah.
that's something to watch for.
That's true.
Which is sometimes nice, sometimes dangerous.
Yeah. So,
Speaking of sometimes dangerous, I made a YouTube video with an opinion, which I don't normally do.
Yeah.
And oh boy, did I catch flack for it.
Yeah, I think you found a way to piss off everyone.
I did. Yeah, this is the problem with being a fairly moderate. When you take a fairly moderate stance, you just get all sides angry at you.
Yeah, you just get hit by everyone. So, do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's a bigger topic, background topic. We'll start with the smaller topic of the video. But bigger background topic is Haas came out with a new machine called the DC-1. And then I made a YouTube video going, hey, this is a response to Sile, and Sile's growing popularity, because the DC-1 is pretty much in the same price bracket as a Sile. And basically the whole point of my video was Haas is now paying attention to this market, the like 30 to 50K dollar market, and competition is good. That was the point of my video. A lot of people saw my video and were like, you love China and China machines, because they thought I was advocating for Sile. I like Sile.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yes, Chinese company came in and is giving us more competition, and that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you love China and hate America, which is not true.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was also a lot of people that were like, Titan sucks, because Titan signed a deal with Sile, which I should have said. And so a lot of people were like, well, Titan sucks and we hate Titan. A lot of people were like, Haas sucks and I hate Haas. And then I got a whole lot of comments explaining to me how the Haas machine was actually made in China. Which, as far as I can tell, is true. So, yeah, there was a lot of comments flying around. I got ratioed. Are you familiar with the term of being ratioed?
I've always heard of being ratioed, but I've never understood what it actually means. I'll be honest and ignorant in this sense, but I've heard that term a lot, but I have no idea what it means.
It's when you get more comments than likes.
More comments than likes?
Likes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think it comes from actually like TikTok and Instagram Reels more than YouTube. But it's when you get like, if you have like 500 likes and 1,000 comments, that means you got ratioed. And it's normally a sign. It's like something you would see on a perpetual motion machine kind of video, where people like liking is the lowest effort thing. And so normally there's far more likes than comments, but it's people going out of their way to comment because they're angry instead of just liking it, or liking it and commenting.
Gotcha.
So I think it's unratioed, but I was ratioed for a while. Yeah, that's a thing that happened.
To be fair, I'm going to side with you on this, which means I'm probably also going to get a lot of flack. But I think what you said, I would agree with to the most part. Like I do think it's good that Haas is making a cheaper machine. The fact that it comes out of China, honestly, any machine that is not Haas, like any brand machine, is technically not a US machine. Haas is, I think, the only brand, except for maybe like Pocket NC, which is now Penta Machine. I think those are the only like 2 ones that are actually made on US soil. Is there any other ones you can think of?
Herco, I think is, and CR Onsrod. They're kind of a different class of machine, but
Yeah, but
they
general
make them
purpose.
here.
I guess Herco. I wasn't sure if Herco was made in the U.S. or not, but if they're made in the U.S., then that's regardless of that. There's very few brands that are made in the U.S. Is the point I'm trying to make. And so if you're not, I guess Haas or Herco or a couple of these other outliers, like general purpose machining, there's far more brands that are outside the U.S. than inside the U.S. And
Would
so
you
to
like
that, mhm,
Would you like to know a fun fact about Sile machines and the Haas machine?
sure,
The Sile machine, percentage wise, is less Chinese than the Haas machine,
really,
because the Sile machine has like German castings and
oh, that
like
makes sense. Yeah.
Japanese rails, or I don't know. There's like the Sile machine. What they did is, because they knew they were a Chinese machine and they knew the reputation of Chinese machines, and so they're
Mm-hmm.
like, we're going with all these high end components, and all the
Mm-hmm.
high end components are not made in China.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Haas is not doing that. They're going with a lot of the Chinese components. So the Sile
Yeah.
machine, the Chinese machine, is less Chinese than the Haas machine, which I
Yep.
find hysterical.
Yeah. Yeah. Regardless of all that fact, people will get upset. People will have opinions. I'm of the opinion that's similar to yours of more competition is better regardless of where it comes from. Because as long as you know what you're getting, you can make anything work. I mean, we grew our business on a Tormach. You grew your business on a Tormach, and that is if anyone's going to complain about a China machine, that is probably the most China of the
Yeah.
China machines that you can get. So not anything against Tormach, but I mean, it's a kit from China basically is what you're getting. That's designed in the U.S. So,
Yep.
but anyways, regardless of all that, I think it's exciting. I love to see competition come in. It has a lot of similarities with the DT, which is a machine I'm interested in. The kind of that brother Speedio type machine. Interestingly enough, the DT is faster than the DC in a lot of ways. We were kind of looking at some of the differences between the two, but anyways, we'll see. I won't go too much into what I'm thinking like business wise yet because it's a long ways down the road. But
Yeah.
I am interested in a machine like the DC DT Brother Robo Drill, something of that nature to eventually replace the Tormach that we have.
Yep.
Some 30 taper machine that is a fast, nimble machine. So, anyways, yeah, you kicked the hornet's nest with that one.
Yeah, I did. Well, I knew what I was getting into, and I intentionally, like, I saw this, like, I as soon as I saw the like Haas's announcement for the $40,000 30 taper machine, I
Mm-hmm.
immediately sent Harrison a text. I was like, "Oh, this is a big deal."
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to get a video out on it right away because I wanted to be one of the first people to do it. And I think I
Yep.
was, other than Haas.
It's funny when you sent me that link. I had also gotten that email, but I went to Haas's website and without clicking on their email link, and I couldn't find any mention of the DC anywhere on
Mm,
their website. And it was probably an hour or two later when it finally their website caught up and had all the information that on there, where anyone just viewing their website could go and find it. So you were right on the ball on that one. So
yeah, I was excited to see that.
yeah.
It does. I kind of want one still. Like, I think the Sile machines are honestly, at least from just looking at the specs, honestly, the Sile machines might still be better and they are cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
But, for as much as I think it's a big deal that Titan's taking over Sile US support and distribution and everything,
Mm-hmm.
like, I still kind of trust Haas more. And I still kind of trust Haas to do this machine right. I would never buy the first generation of it, but I think they're going to do all right with it. I think they're going to do a good job making it a good machine.
Yeah. Yeah. Haas catches a lot of flack. But then again, we grew up on Tormach machines, so
Yeah.
like I feel like a lot of the complaints you hear from people that are complaining about Haas are people that have been in the industry a whole lot longer than we have, and the stage of business they're at is well past the Haas stage. It kind of reminds me of what was it? I think it was John Saunders, who was saying, advice is dependent upon what stage you're at.
Yep.
And you can't be telling people like us who are trying to get up and going to go out and buy the most expensive machine. There can be arguments made for that, but at the end of the day, you can only do what you can afford, and if you can't afford those other machines, then you can't do them. You got to get there
Yep.
somehow. So, and even though the amount of money we paid for our current machine that we're getting, you could definitely buy something like a DN machine. You couldn't buy a DN machine and get into 5-axis for the price that we paid. At least not with full simultaneous for sure. That was one of the big reasons we went Haas, is because there was not a DN Solutions machine with simultaneous 5-axis in the price range that we were looking at that I could find.
I wonder if some of that has to do with their FANUC controllers, because to my understanding, FANUC is very pricey for full 5-axis.
It is. It is. That was the question. That was the answers I got from all the different salesmen. They could do 4+1, but not true simultaneous 5-axis. And a lot of them required like a box that you would serial into that would be connected to the trunnion.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. So it wasn't an integrated solution. It wasn't clean. It was definitely workable, but I wanted to hit the easy button for my first one, and and I can. It'll be plenty good for what we're trying to do. With our current customers, we're kicking ass with the Tormach. So, I mean, a Haas is going to be 1,000 times better than that.
Yes. And a big Haas too, not just like you're not going to the mini mill or a CM. Like you're going to a fairly large machine. Well, relatively large machine.
Yeah.
I guess in the grand scheme of the Haas lineup, a VF3 isn't that big, but
yeah, it's not. Although it just barely fits in our shop, at least through the garage door. Like from the height, because we have a 10-foot by 10-foot garage door, and it just barely fits in from the height and the width perspective. And so, like, it's about the biggest machine we're going to be able to fit in our current shop. So that'll be fun. But it's funny because I marked it out on the floor, and you could fit basically 3 ST lathes in the footprint of that one machine.
Wow. Yeah, it is nuts.
So, I mean, you'd have to have them bunched up together, but I mean, like, you could still fit 3 basically in line in the same spot as one of those. So it's going to be a huge machine. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I'm still thinking about my next machine. I'm really thinking about a small 5-axis. And man, I watched a live stream of the Penda Machine Co. solo cutting. I want that machine. It's so far the only 5-axis I know that I can fit in my shop, other than like a mini mill or an OM or a CM with a 5th-axis trunnion. And the Penda Machine Co. actually has a pretty good work envelope compared to those machines. So it is tempting.
Yeah, that'd be a cool machine to get. It's definitely kind of in a class of its own right now.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of my machine, I do got to clarify some things real quick, because I had some people reach out to me, both on that video that you posted of one of our podcast episodes where I talked about we were making machine payments. So, clarification on that for everyone who's listening. Haas did not come after us to make the machine payments. What happened is we got an email notification that said, hey, you can set up an account and you can make a payment on your machine. The first payment was due, I think, in like early February. And so we just went on and paid it. Like we didn't push back. We didn't argue. We didn't do this. Like we just, our MO is to pay things as soon as we can. And the reason we have that mindset is just because we're not big fans of debt. And so, like, whenever we get a bill, we just get it paid as soon as we can afford to. And we already had money put aside for that. Now, hindsight, this has upset a lot of people. It's sparked a lot of very very fun conversations I've had with a couple different people about debt and business. And you know, I see the different shades of gray and all of that. But actually, before I get too much of my perspective, let me get a little bit of your perspective on debt and business. What are your thoughts on debt?
So I have been kind of on both sides of debt. I will say, like, I've never, every time I have taken debt on as a business, like a big chunk of debt, it has grown because of it. The
Mm-hmm.
first big one was when I bought the Pocket NC. The Pocket NC paid for itself within like under 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And, but like taking that first, I use PayPal, in like PayPal financing, and taking that $5,000 in PayPal financing, like that was a big deal. Like I thought that was a big, huge decision, and
Mm-hmm.
it ended up working out really well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did the same thing with the first Tormach.
Mm-hmm.
Did I? Sorry, buffering, thinking. Yeah, I think I did do the same thing with the first Tormach. And then with the second Tormach, I got a real loan from Geneva Capital, the
Mm-hmm.
Tormach I have now, the MX. And again, that was a really big step, but like that is what enabled my business to grow. And then I took more debt on for the EOM, and that
Mm-hmm.
let me, change my business model completely.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I have also taken like stupid debt. When I was like, we had this very long period with Design the Everything where it would be like I would put $8,000 a month in and I would get $8,000 a month out. And that meant that like I wasn't really covering my personal expenses. And like we slowly ate through my savings, and then I let credit card bills pile up.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have some of that credit card debt. And that
Mm-hmm.
debt absolutely sucks. It's the worst thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of stayed even up until basically December was where we went from treading water on that to starting to pay it down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And like I still have that hanging over me, and it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, some debt good, some debt bad.
Yeah,
I've
and I
had both.
I think most people would have the opinion that there's good debt and bad debt, and good debt you use to grow your business, and it's an accelerator that can grow your business fast and allow you to invest and and push your company to new heights. And I would say that I have no qualms about the idea of that working, but I will say that I've had a lot of perspective from different businesses that I've dealt with in my local area that that even though there is definitely an upside and there was definitely kind of a positive debt mentality that you can take, I still like to avoid debt as much as I can whenever I can, and I want to get things paid down as fast as possible. And I'll give kind of a couple different examples in my local community. So I have the job I worked at before I quit and started up the machine shop. The owner of that business had been in business for about 20 years, and he was constantly taking on debt to grow his business. And he just led a very, very stressful life. And, I would go and I would talk to him. And anytime, we dealt with the chicken industry, and so the highs were high and the lows were low. And anytime, when the highs were high, it was spend cash, spend cash, spend cash, grow the business, grow the business, grow the business. And then when the lows came around, it was lay everyone off, like this is the end of the world. We got to cut all these corners. We got to do this. We got to do that. And then as soon as the cash started flowing again, spend, 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 spend. And it was a very stressful environment. And it was purely because of that, you know, constantly reinvesting, but at such a rate that all the different expenses they had were just piling up over time. They'd have, $1 million laser machines, and they bought, they went from a 20,000 building to an 80,000 square foot building, millions of dollars. And this company made, seven figures a year. And so they were and with 100 people or so, And so they were bringing in a lot of cash, but it was still because of the mountain of debt that they had, and still do, I presume. Like the owner was just incredibly stressed. When I left, they bought a lathe, a Doosan lathe that was it could spin like a 24-inch part. Like it had a massive spindle on it. $300,000 plus machine probably. And anytime I would go visit, the machine would be powered off, and the owner would just be sitting in the corner, like tapping his toe, like we need to have something on that machine. We need to have something on that machine. And so, I mean, it was just incredibly stressful in that environment. And then I go and I look at another machine shop that's local. I'm great friends with them. I get some overflow work from them from time to time. They've been in business for 80 years, and they buy all of their machines cash. And they are laid back. Their employees are happy. They have a different problem where their problem is they're not investing enough in the future. And so they will eventually get phased out. And so there's definitely a middle of the road approach between both of those. But the company that's not in debt, they have plenty of cash. They could go out and buy 5-axis machines and dual spindle lathes and all that stuff. The problem is not the money. The problem is the talent and the education needed to make those leaps. But their stress level is a fraction of the other companies, and they're just much better people. The business is just much better managed, and so on. So that's kind of two sides of those coins, and then the kind of the third wild, the third coin again, side of a coin, I guess. I've seen a lot of businesses in the area who have taken on massive debt to grow the business, and then someone else takes advantage of that. So I'll give you an example. Walmart, there's a lot of people that hate Walmart, and the reason they hate Walmart is because of their Great Value brand. Have you heard of the history of the Great Value brand?
No, you can enlighten me on that, or enlighten all of us on that.
Okay. So, from what I've heard and seen and talked to different individuals, the basic storyline is this: Walmart will find a company that makes, say, a bag of potato chips, and they will contract them to make the Great Value brand of potato chips. And so this company will start producing them. A year goes by or so, and Walmart increases their orders. Another year goes by, Walmart increases their orders. And then before long, Walmart increases their orders by like 400, 500%. That company goes out and spends all this money buying all this equipment to be able to handle this new demand, because Walmart is, you know, asking for all these parts.
Yeah.
And then Walmart goes, all right, we're done buying from you unless you will sell them to us at this ridiculously cheap price where you're basically just, you're not making any money, or we'll buy you out for dirt cheap and then we'll own you, and we'll make them ourselves, and you will fall under the Walmart brand. We will still get them for that cheap price, and we will buy you out at a fraction of what you paid to get everything set up and running.
Yeah.
And Walmart has done that to many companies, and there's a big machine shop in the area that has bought up 7 different machine shops, and they're kind of a bully in the area. And what I don't know is if they've done the same tactics that Walmart has, but I know there's some fishy stuff going there because of how I've seen them deal with other shops. But that's the side of debt that worries me, where people, you go out, you get all this opportunity, you go spend all this money, and then that customer that's giving you that opportunity, they have power over you because you took on the debt to satisfy their needs. If they suddenly pull away, it puts you in a very bad position.
Yeah.
And so I've seen that nasty side enough around me that I don't want to take that risk. If as I want to minimize my debt risk as much as possible. I don't ever want to be in a position where I need a customer to exist for my business to exist. Which that brings in a whole conversation of not being so dependent upon any one customer. There's that whole side of the conversation that kind of goes hand in hand with the debt side. But if you're not in debt, or if you have a very low percentage of debt, then you're pretty insulated from what anyone does. Um, and that's the point I want to get to.
I think one of the main things to take into consideration with debt is like I'm going to call it the quality of debt, where is the thing that you are spending money on actually still valuable? So a good example of this is a home. You take debt on a house, you take a mortgage, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a pretty good chance that if your house is worth $100, you buy it for $100 or $100,000. If you buy your house for $100,000, you can probably sell it for about $100,000, if not $120,000.
Mm-hmm.
And even if the value of your house goes down, the value of other houses has probably also gone down. So it's basically just a wash, and you're basically just paying interest on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that, what I would consider to be very high quality debt.
Mm-hmm.
You are paying lots of money. It might be lots of money, but if you need to get out from under it, you can. And you
Mm-hmm.
can reclaim a lot of the money that you have paid over time.
Mm-hmm.
Some machines are kind of similar. So for example, I am hopefully going to be saying goodbye to my Tormach this week.
Mm-hmm.
And the Tormach, I paid about $30,000 for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be selling that machine 2 years later for about $27,000. Now, granted, there's a lot of tooling that I have added to that machine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I'm not just losing that $4,000 or whatever, but
Yeah.
that machine has also made me, I don't know, maybe not several $100,000, but well over $100,000. So that I would consider to be a fairly good debt.
Mm-hmm.
But you can compare that to like, I spent money on credit cards because we needed groceries. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that is an important thing, but also that money is just gone now.
Yeah.
And there's no
Yeah.
way that I can just, sell that food that we ate 2 years ago to get the money back. Like,
Yeah. And honestly, the best position to be with debt is you can use it as a tool to maintain cash on hand. So, like, for example, if you could go and afford to buy the machine and you go and you get debt on it and you could pay it off at any time, but you keep that cash to kind of keep cash in the business,
mm-hmm.
that's probably the best use of debt. And that's at a stage where I'm not at and where I'm trying to get to. And maybe that's the biggest difference of like good debt versus bad debt. Good debt is debt that you can afford to pay down at any point, but you're using it as an advantage and as leverage in your business to grow.
Yep. Yeah. My first engineering job out of college was a pretty good example of this, and kind of a good example of a nightmare business to be in. So we made large air compressors, like large air compressors. I think the largest one I worked on was 350 horsepower.
Oh wow.
And most of them were custom designed, or they were all custom designed with variations on a template, but they were, custom within the template. And, some of these motors, it's like, okay, we need a 200 horsepower motor that's, Canadian voltage, which is like 600 or something, or 580 volts. And then we need this big compressor head unit that, big, huge, heavy pieces of equipment. And for some of these motors, it's like, okay, we're going to spin up the foundry for you.
Oh
And so
my.
lead times were long. Like, in project times were long. So it would be like we would get a purchase order in from, the state of Guam, the island of Guam. This was one that I worked on. I designed the compressors for Guam. They're used
Oh,
in their
that's cool.
wastewater treatment plant. And it's like, okay, we get a purchase order from Guam, and we're going to order parts now. Those parts are going to come in 6 to 9 months. Some of them will come in before other ones, and we're going to sit on those parts for a couple months, and then we're going to build the unit, and then we're going to send it to Guam. And here, Guam, here's your $1 million worth of equipment. And if you've ever worked with a city or a government, you know that they suck at paying. And so they would normally negotiate like 180-day terms.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, like, the company would be footing the bill for this machine for like a year. So, $500,000 worth of expenses for this. They would already have the purchase order and everything, but like the cash flow situation was the worst for them.
Yeah.
Um, But they had a credit line. They were able to, I believe it was set up where they could borrow directly against their POs. And like, that's the only way that business existed.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's definitely like blanket statement. If I had to pick a side, I would say debt is bad, but I also understand that you can't get away from it. Like it's in an idealized state, you wouldn't have any, but there are definitely advantages towards it. So
yes,
hopefully that makes sense. And anyways, it's just interesting to kind of hear different people kind of talk about debt in business because it can become a very heated discussion, and I enjoy that. Don't get me wrong. I am a very argumentative person by nature, but people have pretty strong opinions in both directions from what I've talked to.
Yeah. My TLDR is if it's high quality debt, if it's debt that's going to bring you money right away or over time, good debt is acceptable. If it's something that just disappears, then it's bad debt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And should be avoided at all costs.
Yep. But
that's, well, maybe not debt. More of cash flow is one of the the big reason I'm getting rid of my Tormach. I did like my Tormach was making parts. It ran,
mm-hmm.
a reasonable amount, 10, 20 hours a week or something.
Mm-hmm.
Enough that it was paying for itself, I think. But also it was like 3/4 of my shop overhead. And, losing 20% of my capacity for 3/4 of my shop overhead, like that's a pretty fair exchange. It gives me some cash on hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I will make any less money because I think the Haas has more than enough spindle time left to absorb that. So,
yeah. Now, do you have any work that you do on the fourth axis on the Tormach?
I really never used that thing very much.
Oh, okay.
I thought I would use it a lot more than I did.
I use mine a decent amount now that I got it. Just because I do a lot of shaft work and putting keyways and indexing shafts to put like keyways at different angles and positions to each other, and there's other features like flats and whatnot at different positions that I just get a lot of use out of it now that I have it. And so my new machine is not going to have a fourth axis, and so I'm always going to be stuck to my Tormach until I get a replacement machine with the fourth axis, which is kind of to give people a little bit of a preview of what's to come. I'd like to find a machine to replace the Tormach as down the line that's kind of like a Brother Speedio, Haas DT, Robo Drill machine with a fourth axis on it. Something that can be nimble and fast with a fourth axis to replace the Tormach. Kind of fill that role.
I think I would have used the fourth axis more had I think the answer has just been better at machining. Because my issues with the fourth axis was I had a hard time getting features to line up and clock properly.
Mm-hmm.
And like I made something on it the other day. I don't remember what it was, but I did use it the other day on a part. And I took the time to like dial in the center position better and like dial in the run out of the chuck. And I had just recalibrated my probe. And it was like everything came out super well and it was super easy. And it was like, I could have been doing this all along, but I think I just hadn't been careful enough with it to really make sure everything was dialed in. And that was my problem.
The Tormach is both a blessing and the curse in the fact that if you don't do your due diligence, you will not make very good parts. But it can teach you how to be extra careful and make really good parts that when you get another machine, it kind of spoils you that you don't have to put as much work into it to get as good of parts. And so like there's a blessing and a curse that comes with using a Tormach that can make you a better machinist, but it can also make a lot more work.
Yeah. I've been running the Tormach exclusively for like the past week as I was waiting on the new belts for the Haas to show up. And I have to say, I did not realize how life-changing those machine templates were until I was back to the Tormach.
Oh,
I
really?
hated every minute of programming on the Tormach. It felt like, and it did take probably 5 times longer. It was painful. And I was just wanting to get back to the Haas because I have these cam templates built out in like excruciating detail for the Haas, but I don't have any of that for the Tormach. And it was night and day.
Wow. Speaking of templates, a little bit, I did start building out templates for the 5-axis on my new machine. So I've started working on that.
You've never had a good template setup, have you? Like I shouldn't say good, like complete, like fairly all encompassing templates.
No, I have a lot of. So okay, I guess we should define templates a little bit better. So
because we use the same word to mean 2 different things.
Yes, yeah. So to explain it a little better, you can click on any toolpath that you have created, and you can save that as a template, so where and you can bunch them together, and that way, whenever you're programming something, you can insert a template into your current program, and it can come in and bring everything in. So I have templates set up for tapping. I have templates set up for manual NC. I have templates set up to make the machine do specific things. I have templates set up for specific scenarios, like if I'm using the 4th axis, and it just brings in everything I need. What I don't have is the type of templates where you like load in a part and you stick it in the middle of like your stock and you adjust a few things and it like programs the whole part in one go.
Which is what I have set up.
Yeah.
We'll call them toolpath templates and document templates. My toolpath template collection is rather weak. My document template is at this point fairly strong.
Yeah, and that's something that I haven't done yet. So I think of like the window machining that some people do on 5-axis, where they have file templates set up where you import a part and it automatically has the window machining all defined, and you just center your part and it machines your whole part basically for you. And that's something I would like to get to that I'm not there yet. But what I was working on was like machine simulation and getting all of that set up. Which I applied for the Insider program for Fusion, and I got accepted to it. I haven't set it all up yet because Weston's gone for this week, and as soon as I go into the Insider program, none of my programs will go backwards, and so I got to move me and West. I got to move me and Weston at the same time. That way, we're both on it. But the reason I'm doing the Insider program is because Fusion has a demo feature for machine simulation, that's only in the Insider program right now, and that is linking moves whenever you're changing positions on your 5-axis. So like I've got the simulation right now set up where I've started programming some 5-axis parts just to kind of get an idea of how the programming side's going to work. And whenever it does a linking move, the tool magically disappears from one location and appears at another location. And so I have no idea what it's going to do in between those two. And so the Insider program, it's supposed to like show it repositioning, so you can make sure it's not going to crash into anything during the repositioning or the linking moves. And so that's specifically why I wanted to go to the Insider program, just so I can get that. And Fusion bought Complete, and so this is just something that they're working on the Insider program that's going to be coming soon. I don't know when, and I'd like it now.
Yes.
So, but anyways, so looking forward to that. It's been fun to start programming 5-axis and seeing how much of a time savings it's going to actually be. Even with my current toolpaths and current speeds and feeds that I have for the Tormach, it's already cut my machine time down by like, well, I say this theoretically, it's cut it down by over 30%.
Wow. Yeah.
Just by being able to reposition and run the same feeds and speeds. So, looking forward to it.
Yep, that'll be huge. You got what, 4 days until it's here?
End of the week, Friday. So
today's Monday.
Yeah, today's Monday. So Yeah, no, it's exciting. Got a lot to figure out still, but I think I'm down to like 5 jobs that I have left that are they're not really they're jobs that I've had for a while that have just been taking a backseat. So because I have the extra time, I'm trying to get literally everything off of my plate. Because I don't know if you probably don't have. Well, I guess you kind of do, like your fidget cubes. Did you ever finish those up?
No.
Okay,
I
so
scrapped a bunch and I haven't gotten back to figure out why.
I have some jobs that are the equivalent of your fidget cubes that I'm trying to get finished up before the move, just because they've been on our board since like August of last year. That they've just been kind of taking a back seat. The customer's not really in a hurry, but they'd like them sooner rather than later if we can fit them in, and I just haven't had the time to fit them in. And so I've got a handful of those jobs that it's like, well, I actually do have time. I need to get them done, so I just need to sit down and grind them out. And so that's kind of what I'm focusing on this week is trying to get all those someday jobs that are finally found their day.
Yeah.
So, but anything else? What else you got?
I was just going to encourage you to set up document templates, like maybe set them up as you're running your first couple parts on that machine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the first time you do round stock in the 5 axis, like set up a template for that. And you can slowly tweak it over time.
Mm-hmm.
But man, it saves so much time.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, programming time has contributed very little to downtime on any of my machines up to this point.
You are much faster at programming than I am, and you do longer runs.
Yeah. So like I almost always have more than enough time to program 1 or 2 parts ahead of wherever I'm working. And so for me, it would it save time? Yes. And would it be worth it? Yes. But there's usually other things that I'm working on that it as long as the spindle's turning, that's what matters. And I got stuff I can work on while it's running. So,
Oh yeah, I
but
thought I lost it. I mean, it would still give you more time to work on other things. Oh yeah, so I programmed 2 parts today. It's like one job, 2 parts.
mm-hmm.
Both of the parts, all I did was delete toolpaths, and I think added like a thread mill toolpath to each. But like there was no custom like tweaking around, adding toolpaths. Like it just I put it in my template. I got it put in the stock, and the stock parametrically changed to be the right size. I hit generate. I removed toolpaths that didn't need to be there, and just plugged in numbers to the Saunders spreadsheet and put in thread mill calculations because they were weird sizes. It was like there's an M2.5 and an M3.5, never both of which I've never seen until today.
I will say this because I was thinking of your templates on your Haas machine. When you set up a template, it pretty much works every time, and you're not really speed limited, are you?
What do you mean speed limited?
Like machine time is not your longest.
No.
Okay. So the main reason I haven't done big templates like what you're talking about is because the Tormach is such rigidity limited and horsepower limited that I am constantly optimizing. And there's very few programs that I make that are remotely similar to each other because I've learned so many different tips and tricks and things for different situations that I'm always optimizing to get my parts off as fast as possible on the Tormach just because of how slow it is on that thing. And so I haven't been able to come up with like a recipe that I can just, you know, throw at it that it's just gonna, it's just gonna work every single time. Like I could, but then I would be leaving, 20 to 30% machine time on the table on specific parts. And so I'm constantly optimizing every single job I run, and it'll save me 40 to 50% machine time rather than, having a template that I would set up. And that's purely because of the rigidity and the horsepower on that thing. And so once I get to a Haas machine that's a 30 horsepower spindle and is, for all intents and purposes, infinitely rigid compared to the Tormach. Setting up those templates to be able to do what you're talking about, I think is going to make a lot more sense. Because for example, if I don't really like to go deeper than like 3/8 step down on the Tormach, just because I start getting tons and tons of chatter. And so high feed or high efficiency milling strategies on the Tormach, especially in like stainless and whatnot, they just don't make as much sense because I don't have as high of a material removal rate. Um, versus if on a Haas machine, I can probably run full depth on all my end mills, come up with one strategy, and just run with it. So
yeah,
we'll
and
see.
I mean, you can't have multiple strategies in the same document as well. So like,
You
I have a folder for like these are aluminum parts, and another folder for like these are stainless parts, and it wouldn't be hard to be like, here's, or maybe it's a different document. Here's a tall part. Here's a flat part.
Yeah, but I'll do things like I'm going to use this strategy to this depth, and then this strategy to this depth, and then this strategy to this depth, based on the features and how I can maximize material removal rate for that specific depth section.
Why not just build that into the template? Like, that's not
Be,
hard to build in.
it's not hard to build in. It's just I don't know. I felt like that by the time I go in and tweak everything on a template like that, it's I can't just I don't know. The way I've been programming things, I didn't feel like there was going to be as much of a time savings because what I typically do is I'll go look at one part that's similar to it and just copy everything and then repoint it. And so, and I can do that on families of parts, but I can't do that on non-family parts, if that makes sense. Because I'll have something that's so optimized for one part that, it might be 40 different tool paths, but they're in really weird orders compared to what you would do for a different part.
Mm-hmm.
And while I could make a template for that specific type of part, it's usually so specific to that one part that I would have to make a bunch of different templates. And at that point, I can just go find a part I've already run that's similar to it, just copy that over because it's basically the same thing what we're talking about, and then I just repoint everything.
I bet it's more doable than you think it is.
It probably is, but like I said, it's never been my bottleneck,
Yeah.
and I have a library of parts that I can pull up. I can find one that's similar that has run strategies that I'm trying to run that I can just copy from that one and then repoint everything. And that's basically like having a library of templates already done without having to make a library of templates.
Except you don't have to repoint everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I don't probably use as much 3D strategies as I should. I use a lot of 2D strategies.
I use a lot of 3D strategies because you don't have to repoint them.
Yeah, I use a lot of 2D strategies because I want the machine to do very specific moves, and there's the 3D strategies are amazing, but there's certain times where they do dumb things that waste cycle time that I can fix by pointing it to do something in particular. And maybe this is just me being very picky, but I am very picky.
Yeah.
To be fair. So,
Did I tell you about the dumb thing I did?
mm-mm.
So I was looking at a Xometry part, and it's like, okay, I have all the tooling to do this. I think I have the material. Yeah, I have the material on hand for that one. It's like, okay, it's pretty high dollar value for this job. This looks pretty good. I did not realize until I was programming the part that one of the slots was not a slot. One of the slots was a one-sided dovetail.
Oh no.
So I had to rush ship it's a like for an O-ring groove. I had to rush ship a O-ring groove cutter to get here because I missed that it had a 28-degree taper or whatever to it.
That's
So that
fun.
is one of the things I'm waiting on. Right now I'm waiting on tooling and thread gauges for like 3 different jobs.
Yeah. Well, it happens, but regardless, it's cool to see you kind of grow in the job shop space. It's been interesting to kind of see you kind of grow and pick up more and more work. So,
I'm getting there.
mm-hmm. So and I'd still like to get into the product space. So okay, changing gears slightly. What are your thoughts on the projects on the product space now that you're doing more job shop work as your main income? Do you feel like you want to go back to the product space at some point?
So I still want to get Cheeky Tools spun up. So
Okay.
yes is the answer. But Cheeky Tools is kind of designed to be low effort and a good supplement to job shop work.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not making the products for Cheeky Tools. I
Mm-hmm.
am just ordering them, packaging them, and shipping them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically just like, I don't want to say just a marketing exercise because I think the tools are actually pretty good. It's a much simpler marketing exercise than I had for Design the Everything. So I think it'll be a fairly passive, just like, I'm not expecting it to be big, but an extra $500 or $1,000 a month would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. But what about going back to where you were making, the carabiners or something like a product like that? Like, do you see yourself ever going back down that direction in addition to the job shop work, or do you think that like the job shop space is kind of where you're going to live from now on?
I wouldn't be surprised if I do go back down that route. I will make changes to how I do it. For example, I'm going to start with the marketing. I am not going to do a product that is hard to market ever again. So trying to convince people that they need a $40 carabiner over a $1 carabiner, like, not any fun.
Mm-hmm.
Those carabiners were nice. They are still nice. They're getting nicer as I'm getting better at machining them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a really hard value proposition to sell. So if I do go back in, it's going to be like a tool, probably for a more niche market.
Did you see? I was just thinking of products. Did you see that company that did the barbell coffee cup?
No, I did not.
So there's a company, and someone sent it to me. They make weights. That's their business
Mm-hmm.
model, and they do April Fool's jokes or
Mm.
funny stuff every once in a while. And they did one where they took a large piece of stainless and they turned it into a coffee cup with like a knurled handle that looks like a handle that would be on like a weight system that kind of was welded onto the side of it. And they did it as a joke, and it weighed like 10 pounds or something,
Uh-huh.
or like 15 pounds. It was like a really heavy coffee cup, and it basically broke their website. And they made a limited run of 150 of them, and it sold out so fast that like it was sold out in a couple hours. And then they made another 150, but they're done with that. And there's a whole nother section of companies that are now starting to produce these massively heavy coffee cups
Yeah.
in a you know because this one company kind of did it as a joke.
Yeah, you
And
can make it
so
out of like tungsten or copper or something and get a workout as you drink.
yeah, that's the whole like deal
Yeah.
on it.
That I love that. That's fantastic. I
But
will say, so I'm sorry, go on.
the only reason I was saying all that is that it would be interesting to like play around with product ideas and see if any of them took off like that, and then making that product. And that's like the you know I've kind of been of the mindset in the past of like I want to hide my product idea until it's like everything's figured out and it's like, oh, here's this, buy it. But the method of like show everyone and then whatever drives the most interest, that's what you go and do. There's That's probably the best method for doing it. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I
just
was gonna say the other way I would do a product, or products probably plural, is kind of the exact opposite of what I was just saying, which is just make, like, I don't want to say useless objects, but like useless things that are fun to me. Like, for example, a good example of these is the coins that have the generative artwork or the fidget cubes. Like,
mhm,
no one is arguing that those are useful. Like, they're just a
mm,
cool thing. Like, it's something that I thought was cool, and so I made them.
mhm,
And I could see myself doing other things like that.
yeah.
for example, I have been wanting to revisit the how many holes can you fit in a penny project. Now that I have the Haas, last time I did it with the Pocket NC,
Mm-hmm.
and I basically got so many holes in there that the penny was almost transparent. And I think I
Really?
can do even better now.
I don't know anything about what you're talking about. Did you make a video on this?
This was a while ago. This was when I had the Pocket NC V250, and I don't remember what size drill bit I used. It might have just been a millimeter. It might have been less than a millimeter. Anyway, I got a lot of holes in a penny. It was several hundred holes in the penny, probably smaller
Hmm.
than a millimeter then. And I
Hmm.
want to see if I can get like 10,000 holes in a penny
Interesting. Just for fun?
just for fun. But also, a lot of people really liked that penny, and a lot of people asked me for it. I ended up just like sticking it in an envelope and sending it to somebody.
Hmm.
It weighed basically nothing. And
Well,
so
yeah.
I would like it's a dumb product. Like, who would buy a penny that has 20,000 holes in it?
Mm-hmm.
But it would be a fun, like, that is the kind of thing I would do as a product.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. We'll see. I still got to figure out what would make a good product for us. It's either got to be functional or it's got to be
Mm-hmm.
unique. And, that's kind of the two different criterias that would make me want to make something.
Yep.
So,
And those are generally the criterias that work well on products.
yeah. I just haven't found anything that I feel like I could do better than what already exists or is unique enough.
Yeah.
And honestly, the deck defenders that we did, I honestly think there could be a really big market for those even today. The Tormach was the wrong machine to produce them on,
Mm-hmm.
but I still have people whenever they see them in person, like they really like them. It's a hard product to sell, like from photos, but anyone that's gotten their hands on one, they always like it way more than if they just saw a photo of it.
Again, you have the marketing issue with a product like that.
Mm-hmm. So, and that's something that I had one guy who wants to try to market them at one point,
Hmm.
and he bought a bunch. I haven't heard from him since, but I'd be curious. So,
Okay, I found the my old Instagram post.
mm-hmm.
I think for the one that actually worked, I was using a 1 millimeter end mill, and I basically packed as many, or excuse me, a 1 millimeter drill. I packed as many 1 millimeter holes as I could on a penny, and that was the one that actually worked. And the penny came out almost feeling like it was invisible. I tried again with a smaller end mill, or excuse me, a smaller drill, and I got like 2,500 in a grid. But like I only was able to spot drill them, and I wasn't actually able to successfully drill a hole at whatever size that was.
Gotcha.
So I want to go back and revisit it to see how
the
many holes I can get in a penny.
The V250 was that 50,000 RPMs?
Yes.
Oh wow! So it was even higher RPMs than your current machine.
Yep. Obviously a little less rigid. That's a
Yeah.
good machine. I like that little V250. My only problem with it is it had a really long warm up cycle that you had to run every time before you used it. It
Oh
was
really?
like, I want to say it was 50 minutes, but I may just be saying that because it's a V250. It was at least half an hour. And like, I wasn't doing it full time at the time. I had kids, and it was like, if I wanted to go out and make something with the V250, I'd have to like turn it on and then wait a half an hour, and then like my entire window to make something would be gone.
Gotcha.
It also killed the air compressor I had at the time because it ate air.
Oh really? Those things required an air compressor?
Yeah, it has a spindle purge, like an aggressive one, and maybe for cooling.
Huh? I
But
didn't know that.
I don't. They have a new version of the V250 now, and I don't think it has those same problems.
Okay.
But
Okay.
the model I did, which was on loan to me from Pocket NC, did have those issues.
Gotcha.
Now I just want a solo.
Yeah. So. Oh. Yep, I think it's time. Think of the same thoughts. Well, this has been a good podcast. I've enjoyed it. So, those of you who've held on and listened through, hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did, because it hits pretty big topics, and I enjoy going into the weeds and the deep topics sometimes like that. So it was good. So, anyways, for those of you that are still hanging on, please tell all your friends, and if you're new to the podcast, we welcome you, and thanks for hanging out with us for a little while. This is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity, signing out with AJ from Audacity Micro.
By the way, this was episode 69.